Inequality is a huge issue in the US and around the world. It comes up in every presidential election. But why is this such a big focus? Because societies are very unequal. This table divides the population into five groups of equal size in terms of population. We call them quintiles. It also shows the share of income that each quintile gets. Imagine we represent all the income in the United States as $100. And we split that up among the five quintiles. What would a perfectly equal society look like? Each quintile would get one-fifth of the income, or $20 bill, to split among themselves. But in fact, the U.S. isn't like this. In 2015, the top quintile of Americans would get a $50 bill. The bottom quintile would get $3. It wasn't always this extreme. Inequality actually went down for most of the 20th century. But since 1975, it's gotten a lot higher. The increase in inequality has been driven by the very top of the income distribution. Go back to the $100 bill example. In the 1960s, the very top 1% of family would have gotten $8. Today, the top 1% gets an entire $20 bill. One common measure of income inequality is the Gini coefficient, which can be a number between 0 and 1. The higher the Gini coefficient, the more inequality in a country. So if you give a single, very lucky American the entire $100 bill, leaving nothing for everyone else, that's as unequal as it gets. The Gini coefficient in this extreme case would be 1. But if we took that $100 and split it equally among all Americans, then we'd have a case of perfect equality. The Gini coefficient would be 0. Currently, the United States has a Gini coefficient of around 0.4. How does this compare with the levels of inequality in other countries? Here's a list of developed and some developing countries, ranked by level of inequality. We're near the top of that list, behind only Chile. There's greater income inequality here in the US than there is in almost any other rich country in the world. Perhaps most striking is the inequality that we see on scales much smaller than that of countries, such as between states or cities, or even between neighborhoods within a city. In 2015, there was a series of riots in Baltimore, set off by police mistreatment and the ultimate death of area resident Freddie Gray. These riots highlighted how much inequality there is in the city of Baltimore. This figure shows income and life expectancy by neighborhood in Baltimore. Freddie Gray's neighborhood of Sandtown is just 3 miles from a very rich area called Roland Park. A baby born in Roland Park can expect to live 84 years. This is somewhat higher than the average for all babies in the US. But a baby born in Sandtown, just 3 miles away, can expect to live only 67 years. This is lower than the average life expectancy of the US in 1950. And indeed, it's even lower than the average life expectancy in North Korea today. Why is this? Partly, it's because of income inequality across these areas. In Roland Park, the average income is $107,000 per year, well above the US average. In Sandtown, it's $24,000 per year, less than half the US average. But is this the right way to think about the distribution of resources in society? That is, all these comparisons are about whether one person has more than another person. Is it really appropriate to focus on whether I have more than you? Or instead, should we just make sure everyone has a basic level of certain goods, like health and housing and food? The key distinctions between relative comparisons, such as me versus you, and absolute comparisons, such as me versus some objective goal. It's probably important to redistribute enough wealth so that people won't starve or die of the flu. But once we've met some basic standard, why should I tax you more if you decide to work 18 hours a day at a fancy bank to make a lot of money? So alternative view is that what matters is ensuring a decent standard of living for the bottom. What the top has beyond that doesn't really matter. In this view, it isn't inequality that matters, but rather the rate of absolute deprivation. This isn't necessarily the right or wrong way to think about poverty or income distribution. It's just another way of looking at these issues. In the US, we measure absolute deprivation by the poverty line. This measure was developed in the 1960s by assuming that households shouldn't have to spend more than 1/3 of their budget on food. The government researchers who developed the poverty line computed the cost of a minimally adequate diet of food and then multiplied it by 3 This became the poverty line and has remained so ever since. This graph shows how many people are below the poverty line and how this number has evolved over time. A lot of people moved above the poverty line in the 1960s and 1970s. Most of these were elderly, as we developed programs to get income and health care to our older citizens. For the non-elderly, poverty has been reasonably flat since the early 1970s. This graph also shows the effect of the Great Recession of 2008. 1 million more people fell under the poverty line. By this measure, we still have a lot of folks who are needy in the U.S. So whether the focus is on inequality or on absolute deprivation, anti-poverty programs and other forms of redistribution are important tools for addressing the challenges for the U.S. and many other countries.